That's right, Darren. We just heard President Trump speaking aboard Air Force One. There are a few points that are worth mentioning there. He's talking about working with Israel to secure the Strait of Hormuz, talking about apparently the United States is openly in communication with Iran, though President Trump made it clear that he doesn't think they're ready for a deal, and he doesn't seem to be sure that he is ready for a deal. That's what President Trump said to reporters aboard Air Force Ones. He also made a mention of 7 countries that he could be partnering with to provide security and secure the flow of energy through the Strait of Hormuz. We should note here that we cannot point to any country, at least not one that I'm aware of as of Sunday evening, that has publicly committed to such a plan. But Darren, I will read a quote from President Trump to the Financial Times from Sunday, where he is the easiest way to understand his argument in what this strategy is of this international coalition to protect or to secure the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump says it's only appropriate that people who are the beneficiaries of the strait will help to make sure that nothing bad happens there, pointing out that Europe and China depend on Gulf oil far more than the United States. Now, Trump warns here, if there's no response or if it's a negative response, I think will be very bad. It will be very bad for the future of NATO. President Trump says allies should provide whatever it takes, including minesweepers, troops, and special forces to target threats along Iran's coast. You could argue here, Darren, that this is a mix of military strategy and diplomacy from the President of the United States, as the White House seeks here to share the burden of securing the Strait of Hormuz, where some 20% of the world's energy supply transits through. It's a very narrow waterway to prevent a spillover into a larger global economic impact.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Iran's foreign minister has been speaking to U.S. media, saying they're willing to fight for as long as it takes. Manny, what does all of this mean then for the White House's timeline for the war?
The signaling by Iran's foreign minister certainly does undermine President Trump's sort of attempts to control the narrative here, or to control the framing of the timeline of this war. Now, on Sunday, there was a lot of chatter in the early morning Sunday news talk shows here in Washington into what I would say is quickly devolving into a war of competing narratives. We're hearing from senior White House officials who repeat some of those same lines that President Trump is saying, including that the United States is way ahead of schedule in terms of its military campaign in Iran. We heard from Kevin Hassett, the White House economic advisor, who even went as far as saying that the war could be over in 4 to 6 weeks. Very different than what we're hearing from political pundits, what we're hearing from military analysts here in Washington, who say that the American public needs to read between the lines that Iran is doubling down, changing strategy into what could very well be a war of attrition, essentially as a strategy of endurance here, dragging this conflict out politically, dragging it out economically, forcing Washington into a scenario where diplomats could essentially have to find a diplomatic offer to this conflict.
All right, Manuel Rapeau live for us there in Washington, D.C. Manuel, thank you. Let's bring in Mohammed Val. He's in the Iranian capital, Tehran, for us. So, Mohammed, what more are you hearing there from the Iranians on who can use the Strait of Hormuz?
Yes, Darren, the Iranians are very clear about this situation. Their narrative is that the Strait of Hormuz is not even closed. It's closed only to hostile powers, basically the United States and Israel, and any other country that is allied to them and helping them in this war. So instead of the initial reports that Iran is closing the Strait of Hormuz completely, now they are making it very clear that it is not closed. And I think the intention there on the part of Iranians is that to attack and to undermine the narrative, the American narrative, about the need for a global coalition of forces to fight Iran, to force Iran to open the states. So Iran is saying, no, it's open. There is no need for China, for other countries to come with their warships. I'm just reading between the lines here about the Iranian narrative. So they are saying basically that the American propaganda about the strait being closed to the international transit of global supplies of oil and gas is not true. It's open, but Iran controls this straits. They call it smart control. They control it, yes, and they are allowing only the ships and tankers of friendly countries or neutral countries, not American or Israeli tankers and ships.
Yeah, and Mohammed, the French President Emmanuel Macron posted earlier that he spoke with Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian. Do we know what came out of that call, Mohammed?
Yeah, Darren, we heard more about this conversation from the French side than from the Iranian side. The French said that Macron has urged Iran to stop attacking neighboring countries in the Gulf region, particularly the civilian infrastructure and civilian facilities and so on. But on the Iranian side, we know that the Iranians are talking about no needs for ceasefire, no need for mediation. So probably the Iranians are trying to say that, these are initiatives taken probably by France, by other countries. They mentioned Russia and China over the last couple of days. The Iranians are inside their country.